We don't know, but that's an excellent question, and let me tell you one more thing about Hebrew that will answer this question. Hebrew is unique in one more way, many ways, but one more way that I want to mention. Language evolves with the collective consciousness of its people. For example, the word plastic did not exist, it meant something else 100 years ago. So is the word gay. Right? Today we're not gay using plastic. And so language evolves. We can find records of a language. We see how it evolves over time, and this is why the English language is so schizophrenic, because it's partly German, partly Latin, partly Greek, partly Italian, partly Emmol Abunu. It's impossible. It drives me nuts, your language. I love it, but drives me nuts. Now, Hebrew is very interesting, because Hebrew, the earlier account of Hebrew ever found was 3,500 years ago. Egypt, Mesopotamia, that era, 4,000 years ago. Maybe they found a little something that, oh, I sold you this, you sold me that, you gave me this, I gave you so much wheat, you gave me the small stuff. So there wasn't an entire language available. And then suddenly, just overnight, the Hebrew Bible appears. Overnight. There is no documentation of a language existing, people speaking it. There was Aramaic, Aramaic came later, there was Kushite, I don't know the name in English. There were all kind of these languages, Shemian languages, how do you say that in English? Languages that are rooted, that are based on roots, three-letter roots, not unlike English. I can explain what's that? Latin. Is Latin a root language? And so suddenly overnight an entire book appears, and let me tell you something, the entire Hebrew language, if I spoke Hebrew to you right now, the entire language will be based, all the vocabulary comes from the Hebrew Bible. Yes, there's modern words, but so an entire language appeared overnight in the form of a book that is not just mathematically genius and unbelievable, hold secrets that are unbelievable, but also metaphoric. The entire Hebrew Bible is a metaphor for the way consciousness works. For example, the story of creation explains how the mind works. Adam in Hebrew, not Adam, Adam is a name. Adam in Hebrew means human. Eve means body, experience. Eve is the subconscious. Adam is the conscious mind. The Garden of Eden is the body. That's why there's 4 rivers, because there's 4 fluid systems in the body, and so on and so forth. So the entire thing is not only a narrative, it's also a metaphor, and it's also mathematical, and it's also this, and it appeared overnight.
If you had to theorize, what would be your theory as to where it came from?
I'm not going to theorize, instead I'm going to tell you what esoteric teaching tells us, because the answer to that was asked. Esoteric teaching tells us that Hebrew was given by an entity not of this world. And I'm not going to detail, I can point you to where it is, because some people believe it, some people don't. And if people want to hear more, great, but I found that the reason why I don't speak about these topics as a metaphysicist is because they're not practical. It goes back to mental masturbation. Do we believe it? Do we not believe it? And so when people are interested, I send them to the right books. And in this particular case, I would recommend The Law of One, the raw material, and explain exactly what happened in that particular period of time and how all the language appeared overnight. But I can also tell you what the Jews believe. The Jews believe that the entire book, the 5 books of Moses, were given to Moses by an entity called Yahweh on Mount Sinai. And since he went down and he spoke it to the people, and then they memorized it for years and years and years. And they passed it. And now let me tell you something, just for you to understand how that's even possible, and to emphasize that it's possible, that people can pass such a book even by heart. 2,000 years ago, the Jews were sent to the diaspora. The Romans have conquered Jerusalem and sent everybody all across the world. Okay? There are Jews everywhere. In India and in Africa and everywhere. There's no internet. Means of communication are very, very hard. In most places, Jews were persecuted. In some places, not allowed to practice their religion. 2,000 years later, they meet again in the state of Israel. Not one version of the Hebrew Bible has changed. They all kept it, not just letter by letter. They all managed to keep every in Hebrew there's no vowels, there's like these little dots underneath that says if you say Adam versus Adam, or everything was kept meticulously. And in many cases by heart. And yet they added even more. They added commentary, and that commentary was, how is that possible? How is it possible that a human being can remember a book by heart? But not just one human being, an entire generation after generation after generation. You take books 500 years ago in Europe, Eastern Europe. There were a lot of writers there, stories about the Jews there. And you realize that the reality was very interesting. The Jews living among the goyim, as they call them, among the non-Jews, and they keep to themselves. They only, within themselves, because they don't want to lose their tradition. Because the second you marry outside of your tradition, you go elsewhere. You change your habits. I'm not the same person I was when I left Israel. And so they keep to themselves. And what happens? There's these farmers and these people, and nobody can read. The average individual 500 years ago in Europe could not read. In the fields and in the villages, yes, in the big cities there were the smart people, but the day-to-day. But the Jews, a 3-year-old could read. A 4-year-old could write. By the age of 5, he starts memorizing the Bible, the Hebrew Bible. There is close proximity between autism and Judaism and Jews. And it is my theory, and this is where I'm going to a theory, that Jews as a collective, because consciousness is not just individual, but there's also collective consciousness, the collective consciousness of the Jews or the Americans or the Russians and so on and so forth, was a consciousness that was marginally autistic. And so this ability to remember things over time with such accuracy was there. And of course also the deficiency of interacting with the real world in a tactful and let's say somewhat a little bit more cultural manner was lacking. Because we see that in autism today. I know that I was like that when I met Diane. She had to teach me these things. And so that's the idea. I don't know if this gives you enough to think with, but
That's a great answer.
Thank you. So.